This is Everyday Discipleship, a podcast whose mission is to equip Christians to live for the glory of Christ from a biblical worldview. My name is Cole Chenal. With me is Chad Lee. We are two pastors in Northwest Arkansas at a church called Reformation Baptist Church. And this episode, we're going to be talking about actually a request. Last night at community group, there was a young lady in our church that's in our youth group. And she said, hey, when are you going to start taking requests for a podcast? And I said, honestly, anytime you want, because we need ideas all the time. And she said, well, what about doing one on courtship and dating? And I told her, I said, Chad, I was like, give me some time because I want to make sure I know what I want to say. But then as I drove home last night, I thought, you know what, there actually could be some really helpful, just practical principles of how we look at courtship and dating from a biblical worldview. Yeah. And so to start off, my idea was to kind of kick it to you and really kind of ask, big picture, big idea, when I talk about courtship and dating from a biblical worldview, what's some of the first stuff that comes to mind that you want people to know or think through or understand dating as it is according to the Word of God?
Yeah, man, it's a good question. And I think, honestly, as Christians, it should be pretty simple. I think we make it really, really complicated. Not to oversimplify it and get into all the nuance, but I think we're courting to find a spouse.
Okay.
As unto the Lord. The purpose of it is to find a spouse. I think with courtship, as we'll get into it, Christians have adopted a lot of the cultural principles, right? We've, with that, taken some of their liberties. We've said, well, it's not that big a deal. We can just kind of meet people, and if it turns into something,
date around, figure it out.
Date around. It's really about you finding out who you are and trying to find somebody that you want to commit to.
Well, also, it's interesting you say that too. It's not just somebody you want to commit to, but somebody that makes me happy.
Yeah.
That it's like the primary goal is like, it's all about me. It's very me focused, which, listen, like you should not be dating somebody that makes you miserable. I mean, that's not the principle either. Yeah. But like, there needs to be a servant heart. And I think when we talk about servanthood and Christianity, like we talked about with the authority episode, is that I think one of the ways that Christians should look at dating and courtship is for the good of not just myself, but the other. Like, you love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah. Right. And also, like, what I didn't even expect to really talk about this. It is interesting too, because I think you did hit something really crucial. Is on the sermon I'm working on this week. Like, I kind of end it by talking about leaven, and I kind of ask the question: are you leavened or are you being leavened? Right? Jesus warns of the leaven of the Pharisees. Paul talks about the leaven of sin, and how it leavens the whole lump. And like kind of idea of being leavened by the world. Like, we as Christians, we're called to be leavened. We're called to be salt and light, right? Leaven the world with the truth of the gospel. And what happens is we start living like, acting like, thinking like, doing the same things that the world does. Yeah. We've now become leavened. And I do think you hit something crucial on saying, hey, as Christians, this is somewhere we got to be really guarded, because I do think just implicitly we've adopted a lot of the ways of the world in regards to how we understand dating and look at dating and do dating, even in Christian churches.
Yeah, and Scripture's given us, God in His kindness to us in His Word, a lot of protections for how we court. And I think it's important to use that word versus you get into semantics. But culturally, when you look at the word dating, it really is, it's kind of flippant. Right, I meet somebody, maybe we hang out together alone. Maybe there's just not a lot of rules to it. Courting, there's a purpose behind it.
There's a mission behind it.
Yeah. Versus saying, like, we want our Christian youth and Christian teenagers to be hanging out with one another. That's a natural part. That's a blessing from the Lord, right? To hang out with somebody from the opposite sex and to find them attractive and to find there's interests that are shared there, right? And hanging out with them, but differentiating. Courting is like there's an intentional purpose there. And some of those protections, we can go ahead and get into it a little bit. I think from a biblical perspective, in a Christian family, the parents have authority.
Okay.
They have authority on who their teenager is going to be, quote unquote, courting, right? Versus saying, hey, we're going to go and hang out with a group of friends and we're going to go watch a movie, right? Obviously, there's freedom and earned trust with teenagers. But when you actually say, no, this is somebody I am really interested in, and there's a connection there, there's a genuine affection there, there's an attraction there, all of these categories that get checked, then the parents have an absolute say, right? And they set up these boundaries for how that courtship is going to look.
So here's a question. What about someone that's out of their parents' house?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of nuance, a teenager versus a 25-year-old, right?
Okay.
I don't necessarily, like if my, I have 2 daughters. When they're 16, 17, 18, I'm going to have a lot of say into where they're going and who they're hanging out with, right? If they're getting closer to the age where I'm like, okay, there could be a little bit of a serious conversation here. They've shown an interest. They're very mature. They're strong in the faith. There's a genuine interest there. I'm going to obviously want to meet the parents if I haven't already. Now, if they're 27, 28, 30 years old, right, and they haven't been married, there's a little bit more freedom for them to say, yeah, I don't necessarily have to meet the parents, right, and like have that conversation. But they're still under my headship. My single daughter, no matter if she's 30, 35, she's still under my headship.
Yeah.
Right. And so I do want to be an active participant in helping her make a wise decision on who she's going to commit her life to.
Yeah, I think like with guys, like it's kind of like the wisdom. I think wisdom would say, because obviously I'm a man, newsflash, and I think if you're out. I'm looking at the perspective. You're out of the house, like you're post college and early career or whatever. I do still think there's wisdom in going to the dad, right? Of like authority is meant to be good for the good of those under it and the protection and blessing of those under it. And so whatever that authority is, ideally, right, if it's a Christian girl, she's Christian parents. If she doesn't have Christian parents, I still think you should ask your dad. And they might think like, what the heck are you doing? Like, I've never heard of this in my life. But I mean, even church authority, I think, can be a helpful substitute's not the right word, but like say a young woman doesn't have Christian parents at all. She doesn't really trust their spiritual wisdom. She obviously loves her family, but hey, this guy started talking to me. I think it's totally appropriate for her to go to her pastors and say, hey, can you help me here? Yeah. Can you meet him and just see what kind of guy you think he is? And right. And I think like for like a young woman especially is like, hey, let the male authority in my life, whatever that is, preferably father, look at this man and give me an evaluation. Because like I think there's an element there where men know men, right? Like you kind of know what you're looking for. You can kind of, I don't know how to explain it other than like just kind of gut feeling. Like guys kind of know, okay, this dude is a good dude. This dude's kind of shady or sketch or just feel off about him, something like that. But the whole principle is basically like, hey, this is not maybe one of the ways we've tried to do it like the world. We've isolated it so much where it's just such this individualistic thing where I'm now out there somewhere on my own trying to figure out dating instead of having the blessing of other people in community speaking to my life, looking at it, helping us along the way.
Yeah, I mean, teenagers saying, well, you can't tell me what to do. Right? I like this person. I'm going to go and, connection. I like this person. I'm going to go and do it. I think biblically, when you look at courtship, you want to bring it into the light. There's wisdom in many counselors. Like you want the relationship to be seen by many, right? I think that's a protection for those that are obviously growing up and they're like, man, I really have a desire to be married. One of the protections God gives us is obviously the local church body, authority in the home, and parents that have raised their children in the Lord. They know their children, right? They know what they like, what they dislike. It's not like this arranged marriage. It's more of a, like, I'm going to have input here.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to help you grow in wisdom on what it actually looks like to commit to somebody. And I think the process has been really hijacked by the secular world around us because it's been so individualized. Well,
they've devolved to like, you swipe the right way on a app and now you're like hooking up with somebody.
Oh man, one of the lasting consequences of this and social media is a lot of, let's just say, teenage boys struggle to go up and talk to a girl, right? To be confident in who they are and what they have to offer somebody with a genuine respect and honor and like kind of that chivalry that's gotten lost in this culture for sure. But no, they've made it all online. And so it's hard. It's hard for guys to take a step and say, I'm going to be courageous and introduce myself and get to know somebody face to face.
It's funny. You do forget how like nervous you get talking to a girl.
Sure.
Like when you're asking her out on a date, like how scared you get the sweaty hands.
But you should. I think it's dangerous when you lose that.
Yeah.
Like, because it should mean something. There's a gravity to it, right? There are stakes involved.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, so like one of the things like you said, right? So when we talk about biblical principles, I mean, because this episode's not going to be, hey, are you allowed to date at 16, 15, whatever, like what we're kind of saying, like, hey, parents are going to have really kind of the say on that. I do think there's wisdom one way or the other. Like, I think one of the ways to look at it just with wisdom is in terms of how deep the relationship's going, like hanging out, whatever, that's all great, right? But I think wisdom would say, is there at least a runway towards marriage? Like if there's no runway whatsoever towards marriage, it's probably not the wisest thing in the world. Like you're 14 years old, like there's no runway, no possibility that's going to be happening anytime soon. Like what my question would be like with your what you're saying, the purpose of courtship and dating is marriage, to find a spouse. It's not to have a good time. It's not to have companionship, right? We can have community and fellowship within a church body without being in a romantic relationship. And so you want to have like a runway towards it. And then the other thing you said, so one, having the end in mind, marriage, and two, having other people involved, like bringing it into the light, like not letting dating. I think dating can get really dangerous when it's like all secret and we're all alone doing our own thing. No one really knows about it. No one really knows what's going on. But the parental authority is a huge thing. I think even out of the home, parental insight and wisdom is a huge thing, right? Listen, just practically, like, dude, you don't want your mom and your wife just at odds all the time. Like if they hate each other, that's gonna be rough. It's gonna be hard. So you should bring her around and say, hey, mom, dad, I want you to meet her and say what you think. Right. It doesn't mean if like, if your mom, like they don't have to be best friends, but if there's a huge rift there, it's like you got to ask, okay, why is that? That would be what wisdom would say.
When you bring it out into the light and you're open and honest about asking those questions, because again, you look at divorce rates culturally, there's not that gravity and weight in making this decision. Like there's a lot of boxes that need to be checked. Now sometimes those boxes can be checked really, really quickly, right? If there's just there's a lot of things. There's companionship, the chemistry's there. Obviously, all the big questions about, obviously the starting point is, are they a Christian? Right. That's one of the foundational things. They've got to be a Christian for you to be dating. Or courting. That's why the categories of friendship. Man, we're just hanging out. We got a group. We're hanging out. There's not a lot that goes into it. Obviously, I'm still going to have a say on who my children are hanging out with. Right. It's just not like you get to hang out with whoever you want to. And then when that time comes, when there's somebody that there is that runway. Then you talk about what actual courtship looks like, an intentional decision to say, no, I want to pursue something towards marriage with this individual.
So let me ask you this. So like, obviously this might be interesting to you. We're two men that, when the Bible says a wife of noble character, who can find, we've been very blessed.
Very, very blessed.
By God. Yes. With women that are of noble character and immense blessings to our lives. And so, take me back to like you and Emma. And how you guys even met, really, and like what were your thoughts, like kind of like how you were thinking about courting. When it came to Emma and talking to her and what that looked like.
We met in graduate school, and I kind of knew from the beginning. I mean, there's some of those boxes get checked. You can't assume that somebody's a Christian just because they're going to a Christian college. Right, I know. That's a wrong assumption there. It became very clear though that she was a Christian, and obviously there was an attraction there. Right, I thought she was beautiful, and so our courtship went really quick, I guess, by a lot of standards. We met in the spring. We had a class together, and then I asked her out. I had asked my buddies. I said, "Hey, here's this girl, and here's some stuff about her." I was in graduate school, so mid-20s. I did talk with my parents about her, though. But there was a different level of oversight there, right? And I made some mistakes in dating, obviously growing up, teenage years and then undergraduate. And then whenever we met, though, we had a date. I went to P.F. Chang's, so it's got a fond place in my heart, man. And she said yes. Obviously said yes. We went on a date. Not obviously she said yes to me, but we went on a date. Therefore, yes, she said yes to going on a date.
Well, also obviously she said yes to you. You're a catch.
Yes, I appreciate that, bro. No, God was very kind to me and blessed me with my wife, and so we dated, and then I proposed. Again, the first time after our first date that evening, she went and spent time with my friends, like my close buddies and their wives. So it was very intentional. Like looking back on it, lots of people got to see us together and kind of evaluate. And then, man, we were engaged this December. Oh, man, I can't forget. December of that same year, and then married that following April. So it was about a year total. From the first time, we went out and then got married.
Yeah.
Was yours that fast? Yours wasn't that fast.
Mine was faster, a little bit.
Okay.
Mine was 10 months.
Okay, yeah. From first date to marriage?
No, from meeting.
Oh, wow. Okay.
From like, hello, my name is Cole. I moved to Seattle,
there you go.
And I'm miserable here. But So like I think it's like what were like some of the guiding. So one of the guiding principles obviously was like, hey, you're doing it for marriage. You had your friends involved, but serious about what you're doing. And then like what were the kind of the things that you were doing in your courtship and in your dating that was like leading towards, because right, if one of the questions you always get when you talk about courtship and dating is like, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know that you're supposed to get married to them?
Yeah. No, we knew really early that, okay, we're serious about this. Like we're looking towards marriage. And so there were lots of conversations with parents. I met her parents really quickly. I did not have, and I missed this part. I didn't really have, I was a member of a church. I'm trying to remember. I don't even remember what church it was at that time. Looking back, I probably would have had more of the pastoral, gone to the pastor more.
Yeah.
And asked questions and just got some more eyes on the relationship. But we were very like direct in talking about marriage, what this would look like, pros and cons. Where do we align? What are some things we don't align? And that's obviously happened throughout a relationship, right? As God's continued to reform both of us. I think looking back on the relationship, no, we didn't do everything perfectly, but there was a very much intentional, like we're dating here for marriage.
Yeah.
And we let other people see us and see the relationship. I met her parents pretty quickly after we started dating. I don't exactly remember when that was, but so we got lots of insight from people.
Yeah.
And there was quite a bit of support, which always makes it easier.
I think like when me and Jess, because I remember, like when I think about like what were the guiding principles, I know one of the guiding principles I had, what really from like kind of a having experience like just dating in a bad way, in a very worldly way, I think was that with Jess, I moved up there to work at a church. She was also working at the church, and I don't know. One of the guiding principles I had was like, be intentional, be upfront with what I'm wanting, what I'm doing. I didn't want to play games. I think that can be a thing that guys can do sometimes, is they play games with girls' hearts. And right, because listen, it's fun to have a girlfriend. It's fun to have someone that you're texting and talking to. Like that's a fun thing to do. And I think sometimes you can use your sister in Christ for your own selfish ends. Yeah. And so that's stuff I definitely didn't want to do. I wanted to be really intentional about what I was doing. And with me and Jess, it's like I moved up there. We met in like the end of August, and I was obviously somewhat attracted to her. We had kind of the same friend groups because I had that friend group because I lived in that house with some guys, and they were around, right? It was kind of this girl house and this guy house and hanging out. And I remember we liked each other because like we were both working in the church, and there was a couple other interns that worked hard, and the rest of them just did not. And so at Mars Hill is kind of like cog in the machine, where if you worked, dude, you got asked to do more. Yeah. And so you got really run through the ringer, where me and Jess, we had two separate departments, but we would help each other. And so like our relationship, our friendship was, we were friends. We were going to church together. We were working together. We were in and around each other a lot, which is why I think it happened so fast. But I remember distinctly thinking like, I didn't want to date because I didn't want to just listen, like we're there for a year internship. It just started. You start dating, that stuff goes bad. It's really bad. Like sure. I moved my whole life up there. So I was trying not to date her. She was trying to, like, she was obviously interested in me, and it wasn't, we were just kind of trying to be cautious and slow about it. And really kind of coming to the point where I knew I really liked her and knew I wanted to date her and knew I wanted to kind of pursue marriage with her. And so I remember the first thing I did, I was talking to my mom and dad, really my mom. I was talking to my mom a lot about it and just like what she thought. And once I kind of knew I wanted to date her, I how'd the order go? Here's what happened. So we went to a talk. It was like a dating talk that our pastor was doing in U District. And then after that, we were in the car. And during that talk, I think the Lord really just kind of like said, like, hey, you're like, this is something, I don't know how to explain it. It was like the Spirit's prompting, Spirit's leading, whatever. Yeah. And we were in the car. It's like late at night. And we dropped off our pastor at a bar to meet, and he was going to do some church stuff there with like some other people from the church. And I remember telling Jess, like, I said, hey, listen, I like you. We both knew we liked each other. I mean, we both knew it. But I said, I like you. I want to date you. And I want to do it for the purpose of marriage, like figuring out if we're going to get married or not. And the moment we don't think we're going to get married, that's when we need to be done. Right? I'm not interested in playing games or whatever. But if you're interested in that, I would like to call your dad and ask him if I could date you and take you out on a date. And I said, she started answering, but before you answer, you also need to know if we do get married, right? Because she's from Washington State. I said, if we get married, there's a really good chance we move back to Arkansas.
Yeah.
And you would not be here anymore, and you would be following me down there. And her response was she started crying.
Yeah.
She started crying, and she said, "Yeah, I'd want to do that."
Well, I would say, brother, good on you for just speaking the truth.
Yeah,
of the reality of the situation, so she can know what she is.
If you can't tell my personality, it's kind of like I'll just tell you what I think, and I'm pretty upfront about it.
Well, yeah, but that's a principle too, right? Like you reached out to the head of her home, her father, and said, "Hey, I would like to do this."
Oh, dude, he had no clue. Like he had no idea like what that was like. Because I'm from the South. That's a normal thing for us to do, but that never happened in his whole life. Of the guy asking, "Hey, are you okay if I date your daughter?"
Well, I mean, brother, I'll tell you this: like you can rewind this podcast however many years down the road it is, but no boy, my daughter's not going out with anybody that I don't talk to first.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
when we talked to our pastors, because like obviously we're working together, so that's a whole nother thing. So we had to talk to our pastors, make sure they were good with it, and so like there was a lot of layers. And they're okay. Well, you're going to get in the same community group. You're going to do this right, and so that was kind of stuff that really. And we got engaged. So we went on our first date 2 months after we met. We got engaged 2 months after that. It's like when my parents met Jessica, they met my fiance. They didn't meet a girlfriend. Like when we got engaged, like they knew about it. They were aware of like what was going on.
Yeah.
And like her dad, dude, get this. You got daughters. And so this is insane, right? I still don't know why her dad said yes. No clue. Like I met her dad. Like, so it goes like a month or so after we started dating. So like he hasn't met him for the first time, 10 o'clock at night or something. They came over to Seattle and said, "Hey, Mark, I would like to go out to breakfast with you tomorrow morning if we could. The girls are going to get ready, spend time together. Like, why don't we go out to get breakfast, get to know each other?" Some. I had no idea if he saw it coming or not.
Yeah.
But I don't think he did. But I was like, "Hey, listen, here's what I want. Here's who I am. Here's what is the priorities of my life. Here's how I look at the family. Here's how I look at the church and all that stuff." And like I knew I wanted to be a pastor and all that. And I said, "And I'm asking you if I can ask your daughter to marry me."
Yeah.
So it's like within 12 hours of meeting this guy, I'm asking if I can marry his daughter. And the dude said yes, which is crazy to me. And anyway, so we got engaged and then like married 6 months after that. But I think like the idea of being like the guiding principles I kind of had were, like you said, end in mind, the purposes for marriage, and also kind of knowing exactly, not playing games and being intentional, I think. Because like that's the other thing, because you can kind of get at it from, maybe this is a good thing to say. You can get at it from this perspective. It's like, okay, we got to be for marriage and for the purpose of marriage. And then like, dude, the whole dating thing just becomes not fun. Mm-hmm. Like you can get like, so the opposite, the wrong end of the spectrum is to get so serious about it.
Yeah.
That it's like so tied up that you need to have some fun with each other.
Yeah.
Like grow in friendship with each other. It can't be this thing of like, okay, are we figuring the next Tuesday, are we figuring out if we're getting married yet or not? And like this like high strung deal.
Sure.
I think there needs to be like some room there to let a relationship breathe, to see whether or not you like it.
That time to genuinely get to know an individual that you're before you're committing.
Yeah.
Right. You need to know. I mean, if you're high strung the whole time, the other person's going to think, well, this is a really anxious individual. Right?
Yeah.
And you're not able to joke and have fun and relax. Obviously, not at the expense of any of the biblical principles, like sin, right? You're doing this in the Lord.
Well, you could do it like me going to Jess and say, "Hey, I want to date. If we date, it's for the purpose of marriage," and all that stuff. Like you can do that in a really creepy way, in a really weird way. Like you gotta kind of do it with like, it's a serious thing what you're doing, but you also got to be like, hey, this is also meant to be dating and fun.
Yeah,
and
I mean, brother, you got to be able to read the room.
you got to be a normal functioning human being,
a normal functioning, charming individual.
Just one of the things I think about now too, and I wish I would have been better at, is leading better in terms of sexual purity, because that's another big part of the courtship and dating, dude. Yeah. I mean, that's got to be such a high priority of sexual purity, guarding the girl's heart, even emotionally. I mean, so really when you talk about, you got to talk about purity in all levels.
Yeah.
Purity in how you're treating one another, purity in guarding your own heart while still growing in relationship and friendship with each other. But especially purity in the sexual side of it in relationship. Because like one of the questions, right, that always gets asked, by teenagers, and then usually gets like wondered about by young professionals is like, what's the line? How far can you go and it's not sin? right?
Yeah.
And I always tell people, man, that's such the wrong question.
It's the wrong question, man.
If you're a Christian, your question should be, hey, how do we honor the Lord? Right? How do we honor the Lord?
Yeah.
And I can kind of tell you a line. I think making out is probably not a good line.
No, it's
like,
not a
and
good
that's but that's what happens. That's like where the world comes in, right? I think in most Christian circles, making out is assumed like, yeah, that's fine, and like second base and beyond is a thing that you can't do.
Yeah, they said there's arbitrary standard.
Yeah,
we're to flee. Right?
That's more in line with the world's values.
Yeah.
Where I think like the Lord, like what's the goal? Right? What's the end purpose? And I think you got to guard yourself because making out leads to other things. Like it's the runway.
Yeah.
Right. And passionate kissing and all that stuff. It's like when you talk about where's the line is not, okay, am I allowed to make out? How much making out? Whatever. The line is, how do we honor the Lord and how do we guard ourselves sexually to be pure and holy? Because Paul says sexual immorality should not even be named among you. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's like an avenue that we as Christians need to have a standard for and strive for.
Yeah, that's why I think it's important to have the categories, like a friendship, right? If you got a friendship and you're hanging out and there's, you have a genuine connection there, right? When you actually move over into the lane of, no, I need to pursue this and be intentional, I feel like we're both wanting to pursue something more here, right? Paul says one of the reasons to get married, right? Don't be burning with passion. Burning with passion, right? Therefore, teenagers are walking around with all kinds of hormones flowing.
Yeah.
Right? So there's got to be a lot of protections. And you trust the Holy Spirit, Christians, to want, to desire to put sin to death.
Yeah.
Right? But naturally, God's made us to want, a lot of us, right, to want to have a spouse and get married.
Yeah.
And so when it crosses over into courtship, then you got to be all the more intentional to say, all right, like we've got to protect against sin here. And it's not the question of how far can we go, because your sinful flesh is going to push that boundary. You're going to run
it's a foolish question. Like, how close to the fire can I get before I get burned?
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous. Like Proverbs says, can a man carry coals next to his chest and not get burned? The goal shouldn't be how close to sin can I get?
Yeah. If it's on your mind that this is going to be somebody's spouse.
Yep.
My sister in Christ here, this is going to be somebody's spouse.
Whether my spouse or somebody else's
Whether
spouse.
mine or somebody else's. Right, according to the Lord's plan here. So I need to treat her as the Bible calls me to treat her.
That's a good point. Like I think like one of the things that I would tell a young man is you don't start leading your home once you get your own house and you have the key. Like you start leading your home spiritually right now. Yeah. Right? You're the head of your house right now. You don't have a house, so you're head of yourself. But like you are setting the standard for how you're going to do things. Yeah. Right? And if you have sexual morality and stuff like that, that's stuff you're going to regret at the end of the thing because say you give in to sexual morality and you end up marrying that person. That's great, right? Like you're married, you can have a healthy life, like it doesn't destroy your marriage, automatic, right? But you got to repent of that stuff. But what you're going to be regretting is, man, I was not a good spiritual leader.
Yeah.
And that you're going to have to now learn that in marriage. Like you have to learn it anyway, but like that's going to be the regret is that you want to be a good spiritual leader and to be able to be above reproach and hold your head up high with your spouse, whoever that is, right?
Yeah.
Where you can say like, I honor the Lord as best I can. And
that's a lot of the laboring you're doing now, right? Parents in our congregation that have young children, like it starts now, right? You're raising them in instruction and discipline of the Lord so that when that time comes, right? When they're ready to start looking for a spouse, there's already been a ton of groundwork laid, right? Their conscience is not seared or dull to the things of sexual temptation, right? Those conversations have been being had.
Yeah.
And confession and repentance has taken place. So that it's again another protection for when that time comes. Hopefully my daughters are prepared to not think, oh, how far can I go here? Does that make sense? Like they're thinking, how can I honor my brother in the Lord? Because this will probably be somebody's husband. Mm-hmm. And how can I respect and honor and care for him as the Lord, love him as myself?
That's a good point that really doesn't get hit on a lot in our culture either, because it's kind of like one of those unnameable sins that you really shouldn't say, I guess, in the world at large. But I think that's where like sisters in Christ need to be guarding themselves and brothers through modesty, right?
Oh man, that's a whole 10 other podcasts.
Like that modesty is loving your brother.
Yep.
Because like what does the world say? Well, they should be able to control themselves. It's like, yeah, and you also should not provoke your brother to sin.
Yeah.
I mean, those two things
Both
can
of
be those two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely, man.
And so like modesty, I think, especially for a young lady, needs to be a high priority on her list. And that's the thing, that when you have modesty, not only in the way you dress, but in the way you act, in the way you guard yourself, in the way you flirt, right? Because there should be some flirtation, like some fun flirtation.
Yeah.
But also, like, a guy shouldn't just be flirting with girls all the time. Like, that's improper.
Yeah.
Right? Just like a girl shouldn't be flirting with just whatever guy. Like, that should be reserved for intentional courtship under the wisdom and direction of that person's authority. So maybe here's a good way to kind of end it out. Like, when you talk about, right, that question of, I have an answer, but I'd be interested to hear what you would say too. How do I know if I'm supposed to get married to this person? Because that's what we're saying. The purpose of dating courtship is somebody comes in and says, hey, we've been dating a little bit, right? Assuming they're at a position like where they're able to get married and stuff like that and all that. But like, if somebody says, how do I know I'm supposed to marry this person? What would you say?
Well, again, this is assuming all the other things we talked about, right? It's been out in the open.
That's the bedrock. That's laid.
The boxes have been checked here. I think the Lord will give you a peace.
Okay.
I think absolutely you have a peace from the Lord when you think through committing your life to somebody, because it's a covenant that God is making, bringing two people together. This is the covenant. I think you have a peace from the Lord.
Okay. Yeah, I think like when I get that question, I would say, like, one of the things I say is, here's one of the freedoms. There's not the one. Right, that's a lie of the world too.
Yeah.
Like, how many people have gotten divorced? Like, well, you're just not the one.
Yeah.
It's like the one you marry is the one. Period.
The one. Yeah.
Now, there's wiser ones than others.
Sure.
Like, you can marry somebody. Like, theoretically, as a Christian, you should be able to marry any Christian anywhere and be able to make it work because you're both trying to honor Christ. Yeah. But it doesn't mean there's not going to be some marriages that are easier than others because of personality clicks, liking the same stuff, enjoying the same things, right? Yeah. Friendship and all that stuff. It's like don't you have to be so concerned about being the one or finding the one. That the one you should have the mentality of the one I marry is the one. That's it, right? Back door is closed. No, divorce is not an option. This is it. Yep. No matter what, come hell or high water, no matter how hard it gets, that's what we're gonna do. Man, that's another good one we could probably talk about in the future, like marriage and like how to talk about marriage and deal with marriage and commitment in marriage. But it all to say, so like I have like 3 simple standards, and they're both there's a change in the last question there's 3 questions, and there's change depending on boy or girl, right? Oh,
wait. You don't get to have 3 answers, man. You just made me pick one. I got some more.
Well,
okay, you do your thing.
Okay. So it's really one answer, but it's like a system you kind of work through. There's really 3 things you need to have, okay? When it comes to, should I marry this person? Number 1, are they a Christian? I mean, we've talked about that. That's like 101. Yeah. You can't be marrying a Muslim. You can't be marrying an atheist, especially, right? Especially,
that was my assumption.
Yeah, you're assuming that, obviously. Yeah. So are they Christian? And I think especially so, like one of the things you need to consider is, dude, how theologically particular are you going to be? Because I think it matters, right? Because like say you're a woman that is fully committed, Reformed theology, Calvinism, all in, hook, line, sinker, because you're biblical.
Yeah.
Right? Well, dude, if you marry a husband that is absolutely not, you got to submit to him.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that like a husband can bind his wife's conscience. Say you're not allowed to believe that, but you're going to have to, right? If he doesn't want to go to a Reformed church, you're not going to a Reformed church.
Yeah.
Another way to look at it is like, say you're a committed credo Baptist. You believe only believers should be baptized, right? Well, if you marry a husband that is pedo, guess what? You're now baptizing your kids.
Yep.
And me as a Baptist pastor, I'd be telling you, you need to baptize your kids because he's the head of the home.
You need to submit to him. Yeah.
You need to submit to your man. And I would say he's wrong, but you need to submit to him, right? And so like kind of from the guy perspective, you gotta find a girl that is willing, that theologically, this woman's gonna be raising your children. Theologically, is she in line? Like, doesn't mean that that you are lockstep on everything or you can't have disagreement on stuff, but like you want to have some of the major theological stuff. I mean, you got to consider it and how important that's going to be with you and your family. Yeah. Okay, so that's like kind of all wrapped up in, are you Christian? Number 2, are you attracted to him? And I don't mean just physically. You got to be friends, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be friends. Like, I always tell people, you want to have a great marriage. I mean, you would say this with Emma too. You want to have a great marriage, be best friends with your spouse.
Yeah.
Why do me and Jess have such a great marriage? Because we are best friends, dude. I love hanging out with her. We hang out all the time. Like, we are playing games, we are talking, we are laughing, we enjoy doing the same things. Yeah. That our marriage is built on our friendship, right? It's not just physical attraction. Now, obviously that's there, but we're friends with each other. Like I genuinely love her as my best friend in the whole world and partner and all that stuff. And so you got to be attracted. It's like, do you like doing the same stuff? Right? Yeah, you got to be attracted physically because, I mean, that's just kind of natural. That's gonna work itself out. But you shouldn't, like, do you like doing the same things? Or are you miserable doing those things? Right? Doesn't mean we don't serve one another in certain aspects of it. But then the third question, and this is where it gets a little bit different for guy or girl. Third question for a guy, you got to know your mission, right? What's the purpose of your life? What you're going to do? Is she willing to follow your mission?
I mean, I was going to add to that, like, roles.
Yeah.
Roles with husbands and wives. Like, you can have a Christian, but if they're egalitarian.
Oh, dude.
And you're like, no, like, the Bible's very clear on headship.
Yeah, I mean, like, hey, husband and wife are absolutely equal in the home in terms of hierarchy and authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be hard.
That's going to be hard. Right? So I'm with you on that. I mean, you get into all those particulars, but I got to go back. The people in your life are going to be speaking to that.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you got parents that are involved, that love their child. They're going to be having intentional conversations with these couples, with these people together. And so you're going to be able to find that out, hopefully, on the front end before you get down the road of engagement. You're like, well, actually, my quote-unquote future spouse doesn't believe in submission.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like where the courtship's coming in. You're figuring all that stuff out. But like for a guy, like when you talk about like, okay, you're going to pop the question, you're going to buy the ring. Like, it's like, is she willing to follow my mission?
Yeah.
Like, is she willing to go where I want to go? Like, if you're a dude and you feel absolutely called to be a missionary in China, listen, you better find a spouse that's on board with that.
Yeah.
Or else it's going to be rough. Like, it's going to be really hard, right? And I think for a girl, like, you got to be asking yourself, is this the kind of man I can follow? Is this the kind of man I can trust to lead our home? And not that he's going to be perfect, but can I follow him? And can I follow what he's wanting to do, right?
Well, like, absolutely, brother. And that's being countercultural, the idea of the woman going into it saying, I get to be this man's helper.
Yeah.
Right?
Help him to accomplish what God has for him and has laid out for him.
Yes.
It's like when I started dating Jess, like I told her, I was like, I want to be a pastor. Like, you would be a pastor's wife. Like, I want to be a pastor. I want to be a preacher, and you have to be okay with that. That's like part and parcel what's going to come with this thing.
She didn't blow a hole through
she always kind of knew
she
always kind of knew she was going to be. She would tell you she always kind of knew she was going to be a pastor's wife. And dude, I'm telling you, it's literally a match made in heaven. Like, the
providence of God right there. Right?
When I jokey way, like when I say there's not the one out there, dude, there is one out there for me. There's no other woman that could put up with me, put up with my sense of humor. There's none out there. It's Jessica or nothing.
I know. I try and remember to say a special prayer for Jessica during the week. No, that's
like, I have a particular sense of humor. I have a particular personality, and she is right there on board. Biggest blessing in life. But so that's what I would say. I mean, those three questions, like Christian, are you attracted, meaning, friendship, liking the same things? And for a man, is this a woman that can follow me? For a girl, can I follow this man?
Yeah.
And I think if you have those things, dude, you can make it work.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to get married, get married. You can make it work. I promise you. Like, every marriage, I don't care how great it is, going to be hard.
Yeah.
Me and Jess have had hard times, but you're committed to the Lord and you're submitting to Him, and the Lord makes it work for His own glory.
He does. Absolutely, man.
So that's all I have to say about courtship and dating.
No, that's good. I appreciate this conversation. And I appreciate all of the men that we have in our church that as my daughters grow up, we'll be able to have a lot of eyes on and input.
That is a blessing, right? Because, say, I got sons, and, you see my son doing something ridiculous. Like, you should be whapping him upside the head. Like, what are you doing, man?
What are you doing?
And you come to me like, hey, what's he doing? You got to fix this. Yeah. But, that is a big blessing of being in a biblical community that, I think our sons are going to do. We have just a bunch of godly dudes in our church, and that's one of the things I really love about raising. And I'll tell you this too, godly women. I mean, listen, we have no problems when we preach on submission and headship. Godly women that love to submit to their husbands, love to have their desires to be homeward. I mean, we are raising our kids, and that's, I think, the comfort for the kids to be able to trust their parents in the church community we're in, but also for the parents, the encouragement that, man, we are all in this together, and we are all unified in this. That this is a very sweet place. I'm excited to see what the Lord brings.
Amen, right? Dude. We got
lots of kids.
Our kids get to look and have it modeled for them, biblical womanhood, biblical manhood, wives, godly wives, and godly husbands. They're going to grow up seeing that.
Yeah.
Right, and God's kindness to us in His church. So it is a blessing, brother. I second that.
Well, I hope this was beneficial, and hopefully it helps you kind of think through dating in a biblical way. And until next time, this is Everyday Discipleship.